You might think that being a people pleaser means that you're just being kind. You're not. And I know that's hard for you to hear because for years I would have described myself as caring, thoughtful, and selfless. But eventually I realized something very uncomfortable. A lot of what I called kindness was actually fear. Fear of conflict, rejection, fear of being misunderstood, fear that if I disappointed someone, they might stop choosing me. And if you've ever found yourself saying yes when you wanted to say no, avoiding difficult conversations, or feeling responsible for everyone else's emotions, in this video, you'll learn why people pleasing isn't exactly kindness, why approval has become tied to your sense of worth, and the hidden way people pleasing teaches you to abandon yourself, and how to rebuild self-trust so you can stop needing everyone else's permission to be okay. Because the goal isn't becoming selfish, the goal is becoming free. Most people think that people pleasing is kindness, but kindness and people pleasing are not the same thing. Kindness says, I want to help. People pleasing says, I need you to be happy with me. One comes from freedom, the other comes from fear. A kind person can say yes. A kind person can also say no. A people pleaser often feels like they don't have a choice because underneath every decision is the same question. What happens if they're disappointed? And that fear slowly starts driving your life, not your values, not your convictions, not your needs. So let's uproot this. Imagine someone asked you for a favor and you knew with complete certainty that they would still respect you if you said no. Would saying no become easier? For most people pleasers, the answer is yes. Because the real problem isn't the favor. The real problem is the fear attached to the favor. And until you address that fear, you'll keep calling it kindness when it's actually self-protection. People pleasers often think they struggle with confidence, but I don't think confidence is a real issue. I think authority is. Somewhere along the way, you handed other people authority over your worth. Their approval tells you if you're okay. Their reaction tells you if you've made the right decision. Their validation tells you whether or not you're valuable. And eventually you stop asking, what do I think? And start asking, what will everyone else think? That is exhausting because now your peace depends on something you cannot control. That is other people's opinions. And here's the problem. No matter how hard you try, you will never be able to control how everyone feels about you. And before we move on, if you're a woman who's tired of surface level advice and wants to understand the root behind every one of your fears and patterns and what's keeping you stuck, make sure you subscribe because that's exactly what we do here. We don't just talk about what's happening on the surface, we uncover what's actually underneath it so you can create lasting change, not temporary fixes. Here's what people pleasing quietly teaches you. Every time you ignore your feelings to avoid upsetting someone else, you cast a vote against yourself. Every time you stay silent when something matters, every time you shrink your needs, every time you betray your truth, you enforce the same lessons. My feelings matter less. And after enough repetitions, something happens. You stop trusting yourself, not because you're broken, but because you've trained yourself to ignore your own voice. Many women say, I don't even know who I am anymore. And often that's because they spent years listening to everyone else except themselves. And this is where everything changed for me. People pleasing isn't the inability to disappoint others. It's the inability to tolerate their disappointment. Those are not the same thing. The problem isn't that someone gets upset. The problem is that their disappointment feels so unbearable to you. So you rush to fix it. You over-explain. You apologize. You even change your mind. You say yes when you mean no. Not because they're controlling you, but because you're trying to escape the discomfort of their approval. And that's a very different problem. Let's uproot this. Think about the last time you couldn't say no. Not the request, the fear. What did you believe would happen if you disappointed them? Would they be angry? Would they think less of you? Would they pull away? Would they stop choosing you? Because that is the root. The request was never the problem. The fear attached to the request was. So, what do you actually do with all of this? Because awareness is powerful, but awareness without action does not create change. Here are 3 practical steps that help me start breaking the people pleasing cycle. Number 1, pause before you answer. Most people pleasing happens automatically. Someone asks you for something, and before you've even checked in with yourself, you've already said yes. So let's create a pause. Try saying, "Let me think about that. Can I get back to you? I need to check my schedule first." That pause gives you space to hear your own voice before everyone else's expectations take over. Number 2, stop over explaining. People pleasers often need to believe that they need the perfect reason for every boundary, but a boundary doesn't become valid because it's well defended. It's valid because it's yours. Instead of saying, "I'm so sorry, I wish I could, but I've had such a busy week and I have this thing and that thing," practice saying, "I won't be able to make it." Full stop. The more you over-explain, the more unconsciously you are asking them for permission. Number 3, let people have their feelings. This one is hard because many people pleasers feel responsible for managing everyone else's emotional experience. But you're not responsible for preventing disappointment. You're responsible for being honest. Someone can be disappointed by your boundary and still respect you. Someone can disagree with your decision and still love you. Part of healing is learning to let other people have their feelings without making those feelings your responsibility to fix. And honestly, this is where real freedom begins. Not when nobody gets upset, but when someone is upset and you don't abandon yourself to make it go away. Healing from people pleasing is not about becoming rude. Not at all. It isn't even about becoming selfish. And it isn't about never caring what anyone thinks. It's about rebuilding self-trust. The next time you're faced with a decision, pause. Before you answer, before you explain, before you justify, ask yourself, what do I actually want? Not what will make everyone else happy, not what will avoid the conflict, not what will get the approval, but what do I actually want? Because every time you answer that question honestly, you strengthen something people pleasing has weakened. You trust yourself. And self-trust is what eventually frees you from needing the constant approval. The truth is, people pleasing isn't a kindness problem. It's a self-worth problem. When your worth depends on being liked, you'll spend your entire life performing for acceptance. But healing begins when you realize something powerful. Not everyone has to approve of you for you to be valuable. Not everyone has to understand you for you to be worthy. And not everyone has to like you for you to belong. The goal is, yes, to get comfortable disappointing people. And it is to stop abandoning yourself every time they're disappointed. Before you go, I want you to think about this. Where in your life are you abandoning yourself to keep someone else comfortable? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, keep growing and keep uprooting. I'll see you in the next one. Bye now.